At 18 years old, a young Vivian Malone eagerly anticipated opening a letter received from the University of Southern Alabama in Mobile. This letter controlled her fate, the chance to attend a top university as an African-American woman. To her amazement, she had been denied. The reason? Quotas had been filled and enrollment closed. In 1961, Vivian Malone became determined she would achieve her goal. In the 1954 Supreme Court case Brown v. Board of Education, the court found that the segregation of schools was unconstitutional. This overruled the court's previous ruling that separate but equal was constitutional. This ruling gave the courage for Vivian Malone to join forces with the NAACP to take on the state of Alabama and fight for her right through the court system to attend the most prestigious school in Alabama. In January 1963, newly elected Governor George Wallace delivered his inaugural address. In his remarks, the new governor stood on the side of segregation, stating, "In the name of the greatest people that have ever trod this earth, I draw the line in the dust and toss the gauntlet before the feet of tyranny, and I say, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever." He continued by saying, "We will not sacrifice our children to any such type of school system, and you can write that down." Governor Wallace continued, "Let us send this message back to Washington by our representatives who are with us today, that from this day we are standing up, and the heel of tyranny does not fit the neck of an upright man." The challenge to both the courts and the federal government had been laid down. Wallace was publicly defying the federal government as if they were the oppressors, and he promised to stand in the way of desegregation, even if it meant using his own body. By the summer of 1963, District Court Judge Harlan Grooms granted legal permission for Vivian Malone to attend school, citing Brown v. Board of Education as the precedent. Wallace, after hearing the news of the state's court's ruling, vowed to keep his inaugural promise, defying the state courts and forcing President Kennedy into a decision. Would Kennedy uphold the court's ruling and challenge Wallace, or would he avoid taking a stance, which was politically safe, and abandon the civil rights movement? After some deliberation, Kennedy ordered to enforce the ruling of the court for the students to be integrated into the University of Alabama and place the power of the federal government behind the ruling. On June 11, 1963, Deputy Attorney Nicholas Katzenbach, accompanied 3 motorcades of federal U.S. Marshals, arrived to escort Vivian Malone and James Hood into Foster Auditorium at the University of Alabama in Tuscaloosa to enroll. Governor Wallace, standing in the schoolhouse door at the very threshold of the most celebrated academic institution in Alabama, denied the constitutional right of equal access to education, blocking the entrance with his own body. Katzenbach confronted Wallace in the front of a crowd of hundreds and asked Wallace to stand aside. Wallace responded in a statement claiming that this, the unwelcome, unwanted, unwarranted, and force-induced intrusion upon the campus of the University of Alabama of the might of the central government offers a frightening example of the oppression of the rights of this state by officers of the federal government. Wallace attempted to make those who stand up for segregation appear as victims. Wallace received a second warning from a military general that he would be physically removed if he did not remove himself. At that point, Wallace stepped down, walking away, lost in the sea of faces. 5 minutes later, Vivian Malone, walking tall and confident through a forest of spectators, all standing witness to the spectacle of justice, entered Foster Auditorium and the University of Alabama, to the sound not of booing and jeers, but a minority clapping in support. Vivian Malone left the University of Alabama as the first African American to receive a bachelor's degree from the university. Malone defied history and set in motion a change that began to break glass ceilings and transform institutions that stood as gatekeepers, blocking the path to prosperity into avenues for all people to travel on their voyage to the mountaintop.